Welcome to Galactic Initiative. I'm your host, Jeff. Grand Admiral Sean joins me to review The Mandalorian and Grogu, or Mandogu, as I've decided to call it. Welcome, Sean.
Hello, my friend.
I'll pose questions that target specific areas of the production. First, what are your thoughts on the timing? Was Mandogu an appropriate film on an appropriate schedule, or, as ticket sales seem to indicate, a concept that overstayed its welcome and thus should have been discontinued years prior to 2026?
It is an interesting thing for Disney to lean into as the first product to be released in the theaters in 7 years, I think. It feels like the Mando's moment has passed. It's been several years since season 3. Season 3 was not well received. General buzz around Mando and Grogu has tapered off. You're starting to see that the toys, for example, some of the leftover merchandise from the TV show is not necessarily selling. It's getting moved into discount outlets. It's starting to be peg warmers. If the momentum had been kept up, if there was maybe another season recently, you could maybe argue that it was an appropriate thing. It's in the fans' mind. Whether it's popular or not, you'd have to wait and see what that season would look like, because again, season 3 sort of hit wrong with the fans. But I think that part of the problem with the ticket sales for this film is we're hearing a lot of conversation out there about, is Star Wars dead? Is this the end of the franchise? Is there no buzz surrounding Star Wars? Blah, blah, blah. I just think that this was not the right vehicle to relaunch Star Wars as a cinematic franchise. And so the ticket sales are clearly reflecting that, because you're taking something out of the Star Wars universe that is not current in the sense of it's not something that people are currently watching or they're currently excited about. When you take it and you stick it in the theaters and you don't treat it necessarily like an actual film, we'll probably talk about the details of that a little bit later, but when it comes across as feeling like an expanded episode from the television show, it just doesn't feel like the appropriate kickoff to the new era of Star Wars cinema, right? And so ticket sales are a reflection of that. I think it's something that's sort of past its prime in the Star Wars universe. It's not something that's current or exciting to the fans. You're throwing that in the theaters and hoping that people are going to show up, and it's a holiday weekend. There wasn't really a lot of one-to-one competition in terms of genre. It wasn't like when Solo came out that everyone was either mad about Last Jedi or going to see a Marvel tentpole film that weekend and not going to Star Wars. So you can't really get a one-to-one comparison of the Solo box office to the Mando box office, but the fact that Solo outperformed Mando, it should be alarming to the powers that be at Disney. If they had maybe done something else, maybe if they had waited until the Starfighter film, you probably would have seen something different.
So, follow-up question, is Disney trying too hard, being too stubborn with its Star Wars ideas? In other words, would a Lucas-era story have been a more marketable, palatable choice?
Possibly, it could be. It would depend, I guess, on what that Lucas-era story was. I think we've talked in the past, I don't know if we've recorded shows about it, but when they do these anniversary releases of the original trilogy and the prequels, they perform crazy numbers, and that's pure cash, really, for when you think about it, because they've already made the movie, it's already been released several times, they already sold DVDs, and it's on streaming and all this stuff. But the fact that you can make a couple $100 million on a re-release of a Lucas era film, anniversary release of a prequel even, which shows that there is still interest in Lucas content. I don't know, Disney is not handling the Lucas era characters and stories well. The things that they're creating new in their stewardship aren't necessarily performing well. I don't know what kind of Lucas era material could be released that would be better over the last many years now, since fans have started to become more and more disappointed with Disney Lucasfilm. We've heard a lot of things about what were Lucas's original treatments for the sequels. What was that going to look like? Who were the characters, the bad guys, all that stuff. I don't know how it would have turned out, but I would be willing to give it a run compared to what we got. So I think it would just depend. Like what Lucas era stuff would it be? Something from Legends? I mean, we would have all loved to have seen the Thrawn trilogy, the Timothy Zahn books, made into a series of films. You could probably you could mostly write that for nowadays, for current age Hamill and Ford, right? But you probably should have done that maybe 10 years before, maybe early 2000s as opposed to mid 2000 or mid 2015ish or whatever. Maybe do it in 2002. Having said all that, there's enough stuff that was put out during Lucas's stewardship of the brand of Star Wars that I'm sure we could find better stories that could be turned into films that would create excitement and outperform Mando and Grogu.
Without a doubt. Knights of the Old Republic, the Thrawn trilogy, which you already mentioned. I think there were some better options on the table. What is your evaluation of the action, storytelling, and effects? How does Mandogu compare to previous Star Wars films?
So I did enjoy certain aspects of the film. I will say that the opening sequence, the action at the beginning, was fun. The group that went to go see the film that I was with, we were having a conversation afterwards, and we sort of had this consensus that the intro felt like a Bond movie. You show up, you get the logo, and then everybody jumps in, and there's all kinds of crazy action, and then you get the credits, and then you go into the actual story, right? And the action at the beginning was exciting. It was very well done, I thought. There was some great Easter eggy type things in there, and it felt more like the Mando that we enjoyed earlier in the program. Season 1, most of season 2, or half of season 2. And so, yeah, it felt like you're kind of returning to the roots. Then we get into the rest of the film, and there's moments there. Some of the planets, some of the sets were great. I liked the callbacks, the references, but I'm starting to get this feeling like the Mando and the Grogu is a lot of that. Like a lot of the appeal of that is, where can you locate the thing from the previous thing? But I mean, I do enjoy it because it's kind of fun. So that was great. Some of the special effects were good. Initially, there was some concern when we got the early trailers. Some of that stuff was cleaned up. I mean, I like seeing another Razor Crest. That was nice. I mean, it's funny. We're talking about the good stuff, but the good stuff has some questions associated with it. Like, I don't really necessarily like the justification or the reintroduction of the ship, but I mean, I love that ship, and I was disappointed when they blew it up in the TV show. So again, it was good to have it back. But I thought it was a stupid, hey, we found this in the collection of some Imperial guy. Like, ooh. Everything's so f***ing convenient in this movie. It feels very video gamey, right? It's get the thing to get the thing to get the thing to get the thing, and then fight the big boss and you win. People are into that these days. Some of the alien stuff, effects were good. I wouldn't put plot or character development or some of the other special effects up there in the things that I enjoyed about the film. But I mean, all in all, it felt like a good episode of the show. And I hate to say that about a movie, but it still had the feel of having been shot a lot in the volume, and you can't escape some of that. So what was actual sets and things felt great. So when you saw that the visuals of actual sets that the characters were interacting with, that was awesome. So those are the kind of the things that stood out to me as being well executed in the film.
The movie showed a significant decline in girl bosses and sequel trilogy connections. It didn't break canon. It wasn't overly offensive to longtime fans. In fact, it featured fan service for the old heads. However, it isn't performing well. Some are complaining about the stakes after they themselves wished for smaller narratives without links to the Skywalkers. You can't please all of the people all of the time, but what is your perspective on crowd-pleasing and changing agendas?
So I was also kind of chuckling to myself listening to some of the people complaining about how it was a smaller story because of the things that you brought up. Like a lot of people, well, it doesn't have to always be about the Skywalkers, and it's like you can do the smaller stories right, and they're good. I mean, Andor, for example, was a smaller story, but the stakes were high, woven into the lore and into the Star Wars universe, and was adjacent to what was going on with the Skywalker saga, right? You're talking about things we are familiar with and things that are clearly part of the Star Wars universe, but the rebellion was more than Luke and Leia and Han, right? And so you can do small well, or you can do smaller well. This movie was small, but I think that there was some issues with the storytelling. They're not necessarily canon breaking problems, but they're just like character issues, in the sense that the reasoning that was given for certain acts or certain motivations for people don't really align with what these characters are. So, for example, the Hutts, they're these crime family leaders, but they don't act like that. They actually act like they don't have any power, and they have to pair themselves or partner with the rebellion, and maybe also partner with some of these remnant guys, because they're not, maybe they're playing both sides against the middle is the best way you could look at it, but nothing's really been solidified. And so you have this crime family that's been around for 1,000 years or whatever, the Hutts, who basically rule the Outer Rim region, and you would think would probably expand that control in this period of uncertainty post-Empire, but they're acting like they really don't have that power or authority. So there's stuff like that in the story where, even though we are really just talking about the son of Jabba the Hutt and what's going on with him, it still doesn't feel right. Again, I don't think it's necessarily when you say a small story, or the scale of the story. I mean, it doesn't have these great galactic consequences in the sense that if we don't save the Hutt, that the Sith will rise again and the Empire will come back and like all this stuff. But again, I think it's the format, or the stage is bigger than the story, and so the story feels inadequate for the venue. You're getting a short story or a shorter tale or adventure or whatever that would be more suited to an hour-long TV show, stretched out into a couple hours with some overly long action sequences and some very slow-paced moments, and then a bunch of like, hey, did you see that? Hey, do you remember that from the thing? Remember when? Right? And you get the member berries going on. It just felt like, between the claustrophobia of the volume, and I think the original intention of the story that was being told being meant for an episodic television show, that you mash all that together and then you put it on the big screen, you get something that feels small even when it probably shouldn't have been. There's something about this particular production that just felt like it didn't meet the grandeur or the import of being a cinematic event. And so I think that's probably what's fueling some of this criticism about it feeling small. But it is weird, though, also to hear people who at one time were complaining about the Skywalkers and can't you do something else? and then now they're getting something else and they're complaining because there's no Skywalkers, or there's nothing Skywalker-esque about these films that puts it on this grand galactic scale. And it's like, okay, we can't have both, so which one is it? But I do get the feeling like that they didn't rise to the occasion.
I was pleasantly surprised by the film's abandonment of threads from Season 3. For example, the compromised New Republic with Elia Kane and Moff Gideon's geriatric clones. Notwithstanding your affection for Katie Sackhoff, were you surprised and or disappointed by Bo-Katan's absence following her takeover of Season 3?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I'm always up to see some Bo-Katan. But after Season 3, I think there was a little bit of fatigue in the fan base about that. The criticism was that the show stopped being about the Mandalorian and started being about Mandalorians, and specifically Bo-Katan. And I don't think that in this particular story that we were being told, her appearance would have been necessary. Again, if you had written something that was a little more, for lack of a better word, epic, maybe you have a larger battle at the end between, there's a fleet of Hutt ships coming and attacking, and then the New Republic doesn't have enough, and then Bo-Katan and the Mandalorians come to save the day. That would be kind of an appropriate thing. But this particular story didn't require her presence. You may have, been able to, like, if you really wanted to ground this story in the universe and its particular time, you might have had somebody mention something as an aside amongst characters, like, I wish we had a couple more Mandos with us, and have them say something, Bo-Katan's busy or whatever, or whatever. Again, I'm not necessarily a screenwriter, and this is just me off the top of my head, but you could have these side conversations maybe when they're at the Rebel base and they're talking about something and saying, maybe Mando is like, hey, I need to take a few more guys with me to do this job. And Colonel What's-Her-Name is like, hey, I'm sorry, we're dealing with the situation on Mandalore right now, or whatever. You could have brought it if you wanted to, but it wasn't really necessary. So I wasn't disappointed by her not being there. I think that if you tried to do too many cameos with characters from previous seasons of the show, you might have gotten into a situation where now the movie not only is small, but it's overcrowded, and you're trying to find ways to shoehorn these people in and give them cameos and stuff, and it would have felt forced. It wouldn't have felt organic in the storytelling.
Take a few minutes to cover the characters and actors. Were you impressed, depressed, or indifferent? Did you perceive purpose and development for Mandogu's persona? How do you rate the performances?
Yeah, this is probably the biggest complaint that I have with the film. None of the characters in this film felt natural. And when I say natural, I mean believable performances. Except maybe the voice actor who did Zeb, and maybe the voice actor who did the rocking chair guy in the swamp. Sigourney Weaver was absolutely horrible in this film, and I hate to say it because I like Sigourney Weaver. Many of the films that she's been in the past, I have thoroughly enjoyed, but I don't know if she was, pulling a Harrison Ford and just getting a paycheck and, reading some lines and whatever, but her performance was just horrible. And when you think about it, beyond a couple of people in the salt bar and a few people at the Rebel base, a lot of the dialogue was delivered after the fact in ADR, and it's like, even that didn't even feel like anybody was giving a performance. Pedro Pascal's 8 minutes of whatever FaceTime on the screen, I found it interesting as a side note that the stunt double and the other guy who wears the outfit got first bill credits with Pedro Pascal because they were in the film more than he was. Some of the minor characters were okay. Some of the crime guys, some of the Imperials were okay. But for the most part, all the main characters just felt wooden, and their performances were stiff. And I mean, like the scenes with Sigourney Weaver in the cockpit of the X-Wing, she doesn't even look like she's flying it. Like she's, her head's turned to us and she's kind of leaning in the cockpit, and you're like, lady, the plane's going the other way. Like, look out the window like you're flying it. I don't know if there was any real significant development to Mando or Grogu. I mean, Mando was pretty static. I guess Grogu kind of grew up a little bit. He's still a puppet, so I can't really rate that performance either.
I'll name a character. If you have nothing to say, so be it. We'll move on, but maybe addressing a few characters in a more specific way. So the most obvious and the target of the most criticism from my corner of the world, Grogu.
Well, I mean, Grogu in this film is the Grogu that we've had before. He's cute. He shuffles. He tries to steal your snacks. He's all about cookies. But we did see something different, slightly. I mean, when Mando was attacked by the Mudhorn, we saw Baby Yoda do the thing, right? Lift him up, protect him. But this was a little more. It was a little more developed, I guess. He was out trying to find food for them, and he was out getting water, and and then he meets the guy, and the guy gives him the antidote or whatever for the poison. But there's only so much you can do with a 2.5 foot tall puppet. And I will say, I mean, if to be, fair to the people who made this film, they stayed away from the overly horrible special effects or movements for Grogu. So like in the show when he was doing the dart training and the flipping around with Jack Black and Lizzo, it's like that was horrible and it looked terrible. And they, limited that as best they could in this film. But it's the same thing that we've gotten the whole time. I will say that I did not like the Rambo montage thing where he's putting on his Beskar and he's grabbing the weapons and doing all this. It's like there's nostalgia in Star Wars. Yes. Call it fan service, call it what you want. There's nostalgia for earlier Star Wars in new Star Wars. Okay. It's self-referential. It ties things together, right? It makes the fans feel like this is part of a larger thing. But when you're nostalgic for other films or other genres or other franchises within Star Wars, now it's borderline parody, and it feels out of place, and it takes you out of the film. And so that little piece there I didn't like that at all.
Rada the Hutt, or Stinky, Jabba's son.
So yeah, Stinky the Hutt. Yeah, okay. So I hated Rada. Sorry. The CGI was horrible. The character, the motivation for the character. I mean, you know, in your introduction to the show, you talked about how there was a less presentism in this particular Star Wars, you know, the girl bossing and all the lecturing and all the stuff. But the most 2026 character is Rada the Hutt. He's got Stockholm syndrome, and he's, woe is me, my dad was a bad person, and I'm not going to be a bad person. And you're trying to like give us a version of Conan. He's this formidable beast who's trained to fight and becomes beloved by the crowd, right, for his skills at killing and murder and mayhem. But he deep down inside, he's got justice in his heart, and he wants to save the day. And his personality comes across as way too soft and he's way too mellow for what he's been through. He's grown up around organized crime and all the trappings of that, good and bad. This goes back to my original critique of the Hutts in this film. You're a powerful crime family. If you wanted to rescue this guy, let's say they aren't plotting to kill him. Let's say they just want to rescue him. They've got the power, they've got the muscle, they've got the money, they've got the bounty hunters on their side. They could just go grab this guy, right? If they wanted to kill him, they've got the power and the money and the bounty hunters to go kill this guy. Like, it's like, so but he knows all this stuff, but he comes across as very sanguine. He's very, like, oh yeah, after I kill my last victim in the ring, I'm going to just go disappear into the burbs or whatever. Like, I'm just gonna go find a nice quiet place where I can chill out and eat frogs and smoke like my dad used to, or whatever. I don't know. Like, it felt very, very strange. He should have been more upset, I think, and more angry, maybe. I don't know. I just feel like, the writing of him, the performance of him felt out of place for what his character is supposed to be. So yeah, I wasn't a big fan of Rod, and I also thought that, again, the CGI on him was not very well executed, especially when he's in the ring. The rolling around and the fighting, which just didn't look good, and his eyes are too far apart.
Next character, Zebrelios.
Whoever did the walk at the beginning was horrid. I know that I've seen some of the behind the scenes stuff, and that there's somebody in a suit and there's all these things going on. I also know there was a guy in a suit for Rada as well. But for the most part, he looked okay. Like when he was flying and hanging around or whatever, when he was not in his big purple jumpsuit, he looked okay. But that one scene where he and Mando are walking across the tarmac was very, very bad. I don't know if it was a CGI or if the guy who was in the suit was having issues with prosthetic or whatever, or if he was just trying to do a gangster walk or something. I don't know, but it just didn't look good. But the voice actor's the voice actor. There wasn't any disconnect with his character in Rebels. I didn't really have, other than that one scene where he's just not walking right, I didn't really have any problems with him in the film. He's an interesting companion or foil to the Mando, because as we know, his character from Rebels, he's very outspoken, gregarious, and Mando's very cool, calm, and collected. So it was good juxtaposition there with the personalities. But yeah, I didn't hate him.
The Anzellans.
Oh, well, I'm always a big fan of the Babu Frikian dudes. I always like those guys. They're fun. I of all the things you can say about the sequels, Babu Frick was my favorite part. So take that for what it's worth. The scene where Mando runs to their ship was kind of funny. You saw it coming, but it was still humorous. And we've come to rescue you, with our little tiny spaceship that you can't get in. But that was a light spot, a fun aspect of the movie that I enjoyed.
I'll end this character section on a humorous note. One of the best lines from a recent review with regard to Sigourney Weaver's performance: never was Lucas's faster, more intense directive more badly needed.
Yeah, definitely more intense. She was just devoid of anything. Yeah.
Let's discuss the insider's coverage of the film. I hadn't observed vitriol for Star Wars from the Hollywood rags since the early 2000s, when so-called professionals bashed the prequels. With Kathleen Kennedy as studio president, Star Wars enjoyed exclusive promo puff pieces for its awful productions. What's changed? Why do the audience and critic scores suddenly recall the Lucas era? They've flipped, they've reversed. Why did the media turn on Mandogu?
That's an excellent question. I don't. I suppose that the cynic in me would say that it's because Kathleen's gone now that the people who are holding fire don't have to anymore, because your politically correct hire who's running the studio is now gone, so they don't have to, they can be honest finally. So that's a cynical take on it, because if you actually look at what's going on, Kathleen Kennedy was very much involved in this process of producing this film, in the sense that it was all greenlit and started, production under her watch. And I'm pretty sure that this thing was in post-production state when she was officially announced to be stepping down, but she was, part of the press run on this a little bit. And I'm sure that if this thing had been a major hit and made, tons and tons of money and had wildly reignited the Star Wars franchise, she would have taken full credit for that. But I believe that what's going on here is that we're finally seeing the rats jumping off the ship, right? So Star Wars is clearly in a troubled place, whether it's financially or whether it's fan base wise, popularity, buzz, whatever you want to call it, right? Whatever aura surrounds Star Wars, it's greatly diminished. For a long time, you had two camps of people who were constantly praising Star Wars. You had the people who are just, they're enthusiasts, right? But they're not deep. I don't want to be mean, but they're not deep thinkers, right? People are just like, hey, I love Star Wars, and it's a Star Wars. I'm going to go watch a Star Wars, and I'm going to love it, and I will find something good in it because I want more Star Wars. Okay. And then you had the people who praised it because Star Wars was being modified into a current era vehicle for delivering certain messages. And so they jumped on and were praising Star Wars massively because it fit an agenda. And so between those two groups, you had support of either, whether it be writers or people, doing reviews online or YouTube channels or whatever, right? But this ship is starting to sink, and the people who were the rose-colored glasses, never saw anything wrong with Star Wars. Star Wars is always awesome. Even those people are starting to come to terms with the last 10 or so years of Star Wars content. And again, outside of the few positives that have popped up here and there, it's been not good. And so those people are starting to diminish. And so that voice is getting quieter. And then I think that the other group, with the exit of Kathleen Kennedy and with the, I don't want to say return to old Star Wars storytelling, but the reduced messaging and the reduced presentism in Star Wars, that other group of people who were loving it because, you had The Acolyte and other shows, things like that, they're sort of hopping off the bandwagon too, because they're not what they want Star Wars to be. It isn't anymore, even though what they wanted it to be is one of the reasons why it died. But now that it's trying to course correct and get back to something, they're bailing on it too. And they're like, oh, this is terrible. And it's like, well, why is it terrible? Is it terrible because it's actually terrible, or is it terrible because it's not promoting your message? Now, that second group of people are predominantly in the industry, right? So they're working for The Hollywood Reporter or Screen Crush or you name it, the various industry-friendly, politically motivated, Hollywood press, and then the ancillary internet army that swarms around all these various productions and talks them up and says how wonderful they are and how progressive they are and all this other stuff. But they're not honest brokers, right? consistently Star Wars fans, a majority of Star Wars fans have been saying things like, hey, we don't necessarily like these stories. We don't like what you did with these legacy characters. We'd really appreciate more serious, thoughtful storytelling and character development set within the Star Wars universe, not just slap a Star Wars on something that's mediocre or is a self-insert, glorified public therapy session or whatever. We've been sort of consistent with that, over the years. And so, but we've always been called out as being, toxic or whatever, right? But now that the people who have been propping this up for so long with their positivity, air quotes positivity, or their positive reviewing of Star Wars, now that they're moving away, it's not that we're being heard now. It's just that our collective discontent is now magnified, I guess, or amplified, because the people who for so long have been propping this up, the people who have the mouthpieces, the people who have the actual platforms to do this, for the most part, have been overwhelmingly positive or making excuses or whatever, coping, whatever you want to call it, for the Star Wars franchise. Now those people are starting to go away. It's just that our voice, it's not being drowned out. I think that a majority of that really just boils down to the parasite has killed the host and it's moving on.
Final question. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being best, what is your overall rating of the film?
I'll give it a generous 5. It could have been, there's a lot that could have been better about it, but there was enough there that I didn't feel like I wasted time or money seeing it. So mid here, somewhere in the middle, right? So I would give it a 5. It doesn't engender a lot of hope, for me with the franchise currently. You got a guy in Filoni who's in charge who, like you say, he has moments, but I don't know, again, if he's a film guy or just a really good cartoon guy. And we're going to figure that out. And I am having more and more questions. Well, I'm having more and more questions about his cartoons, but some of the cartoons that have come out as of late haven't been the quality of some of his earlier work. And again, does that go back to the fact that George was holding his hand the whole time? I don't know. I don't think that's a good way to build a film or a film franchise or a franchise in general. One of the things that bothered me about this movie is Dave Filoni's Trapper Wolf character, whatever he's called. Dave in his damn cowboy hat, standing there in the bar trying to look tough. The familiarity we have with Dave Filoni takes me out of the film every time I see him in it, or the show every time I see him in it. I've heard him speak. I've seen him interact with people. I've unfortunately seen his social media posts. He's not tough. He's not a hard person. He's not a warrior. Okay. Sorry, Dave. So when you're leaning there against the bar, mean mugging Mando every time he comes in and you've got your dumb cowboy hat on, I can't stand it. It's annoying. And then it annoys me even more seeing him several times, because the first time he showed up in the show as a pilot, they did an interview with him about it, and he was like, "Yeah, I didn't want to do it, and I didn't want to be in it, and I was, and so I just kind of mailed it in or whatever." And so he admits that he didn't want to be in the show. He admits that he gave it no effort, and yet he continues to pop up. So one, maybe he does want to be in the show, but he's not an actor. The character, air quotes, that he plays when he does these cameos is not in line with who he is physically. Like he's not imposing, he's not menacing, he doesn't give off the aura of being military adjacent. I mean, he's basically the new Porkins. And so like I don't know. But that whole seeing him the several times in this film, it just, again, rubbed me the wrong way. We don't need Dave Filoni doing this stuff. I get it. There's a Hitchcockian kind of homage there, where it's like, oh, I showed up in my film or whatever. But have him be truly in the background, right? Don't have the camera like linger on him and focus on him or whatever. And the cowboy hat is just like Hera Syndulla's bomber jacket. It's something that I understand you're trying to do the Lucas nod towards sort of the World War II and the cowboy aesthetic, or the the Western and analogy to the Mando show, but it's so on the nose. It's just out of control. Please no more Dave Filoni, no more Trapper Wolf, please and thank you.
With that, we'll end our review. Thank you, Sean.
Long live the Empire.
If you enjoyed our discussion, please like and subscribe. Did you like Mandogu? We'd love to read your thoughts in a comment. Check out Galactic Initiative for all things Star Wars.